All right, let's dive right in. Welcome to this explainer. Today we're unpacking a really fascinating philosophical argument from our source text. We're going to explore how a very specific theological concept, pure monotheism, meaning the belief in a single undivided creator, is actually presented not just as a religious idea, but as a completely practical, actionable blueprint to dismantle man-made divisions. The goal? Fostering genuine universal human brotherhood. In a world that honestly feels more polarized by the minute, it's a profoundly interesting perspective on how the way we view the divine directly, literally shapes the way we view each other. So let's get into it.
The text opens up by tapping into this deeply universal yearning we all seem to have. It references that beautiful, ancient ideal, the idea that every place is our hometown and everyone is our kin. We really do all share this deep desire for a unified, global human family. But looking around at our incredibly fractured world today, the text forces us to stop and ask a pretty tough question. Is this beautiful ideal actually achievable, or is it just some utopian fantasy? The author argues that reaching this unity requires a highly constructive action plan. Without one, it just remains a lingering, unfulfilled desire.
Notice the really stark contrast the text draws here. On one hand, we have our biological reality. The text reminds us that we all originate from a single soil, from a single pair of parents. We are, quite literally, one massive human family spread across the globe. But then, contrast that with our man-made reality. We just relentlessly divide ourselves, right? By country, by race, language, caste, sometimes to the point of violent self-destruction. The text points out the tragic irony of it all. We belong to the exact same family, yet we keep building these artificial walls that eventually lead us to destroy one another. And the source material actually anchors this biological reality right in Scripture. It quotes the Quran, chapter 4, verse 1, which explicitly states that all of humanity was created from one single soul, and from it its mate, eventually dispersing into all the many men and women we see today. The author uses this to hammer home a crucial point. Human unity isn't just a fun biological fact. It's presented as a divine decree. We share a common origin, which inherently means we share a common equal status across the board. Okay, so if we're biologically and divinely meant to be this one big family, where exactly did things go off the rails? Well, according to the text, the root cause of our earthly divisions and societal sins stems from profound spiritual confusion. The author argues that when humanity strayed from recognizing just one creator, we basically embraced confused concepts of the divine. We fell into superstition, we started worshiping inanimate earthly objects, and relying heavily on spiritual intermediaries. And most crucially, the text asserts that by forgetting our ultimate accountability to a single creator, we essentially lost the moral compass that keeps us from harming each other. And this kind of fragmentation, it doesn't just happen overnight. The explainer outlines this fascinating historical cycle behind it. It's almost like a domino effect. Step 1, prophets arrive teaching pure monotheism, just clear, simple worship of one God. But then, step 2, after those prophets pass away, later generations who are often tempted by negative influences start building monuments to honor pious figures. Over time, step 3, those monuments transition into actual objects of worship, which creates these human intermediaries between everyday people and the divine. And finally, step 4, true direct spiritual connection is totally lost. The text argues that this exact process is what splinters society into competing castes and fractured groups, absolutely destroying any sense of universal brotherhood. So, how do we fix this? To solve this escalating crisis of division, the text presents a philosophical and theological solution. Returning to the pure oneness of God, the source defines Allah, which simply translates to the one true God who is worthy of worship. Now, the text makes sure to emphasize that this is not some tribal or regional deity. This is the single, universally accessible creator of literally everything. And here is the real game changer, according to the author. This creator can be approached directly, completely without the need for any intermediaries or spiritual brokers. It's this specific mechanic, that direct line, that lays the groundwork for actual, tangible human equality. This profound concept of an undivided divinity is brilliantly distilled in a really poetic excerpt from chapter 112 of the Quran. He is Allah who is one. He neither begets nor is born, nor is there to him any equivalent. The text uses this passage to completely dismantle the whole idea of fragmented earthly deities. Because think about it. The argument here is that if you have multiple gods or gods born of earthly lineage, you inevitably end up with a divided humanity. Different groups inevitably follow different deities. But an entirely unique, absolutely undivided creator, that sets the foundation for a totally undivided human race. Now, you might be thinking, Okay, a singular, ultimate creator of the entire universe, that sounds kind of distant, right? Detached. But the text poignantly illustrates the exact opposite. Notice this quote from Quran 50:16. God is, quote, closer to a human being than their own jugular vein. Wow. So the absolutely crucial point the author is making here is about intimacy. The divine is universally supreme, yes, but also intensely personal and completely aware of every individual's innermost thoughts. And there's another verse that brilliantly reinforces this closeness. Quoting Quran 2:186, "Indeed, I am near. I respond to the invocation of the supplicant." Because of this profound, immediate closeness, the text argues that any person, it doesn't matter what your race is, your language, your social standing, you can bypass all the spiritual middlemen. You don't need to belong to a specific caste or find a special human intermediary to talk to the divine. You connect directly. This direct line to the Creator is presented as the ultimate equalizer for all of humanity. Okay, so what actually happens when a society adopts this unified theology? According to our source, it demands actionable, practical equality. It's not just some abstract thought experiment. When you recognize one creator, you are forced to recognize humanity as one equal family. By bypassing those spiritual intermediaries, you completely strip away the power dynamics of class and caste. You show your gratitude directly. The text strongly argues that this pure monotheistic perspective naturally erases the man-made borders of language, race, and state, and actively eradicates deep-seated toxic prejudices, like untouchability. And the source doesn't just leave us with a theory here. It points to real-world physical manifestations of this belief. The author describes how, within the Muslim community, specifically pointing out that many members originate from wildly diverse ancestral backgrounds like Hinduism or Christianity, this theology actually translates into visible equality. The text highlights how these diverse people just forget historical concepts of untouchability. It's a physical transformation. They literally stand shoulder to shoulder in a single row, and they share meals, eating from the exact same plate as absolute, true equals. That right there is the practical application of the entire philosophical argument. So this brings us to the end of our analysis, and it leaves us with a truly provocative thought to ponder. We've seen how the source text draws this direct, causal line between fragmented theology and a fractured human society. So the big question we walk away with is this. If we genuinely want a peaceful world without divided hierarchical societies, must we first stop fragmenting our concept of God? Does the path to an undivided humanity and true global peace literally require an undivided divine? It's a absolutely fascinating perspective from the source material that for sure challenges how we view the roots of global unity. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep exploring.